What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you, as always, from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we will be discussing the Craig Kimbrel trade, the first one, which occurred back on April 5th, 2015. And this trade was between the San Diego Padres and the Atlanta Braves. Now, before we begin, I know this is a different background. Hear me out. I'm just trying something new. Laying a black tarp down, makes it a little nicer. I hope this is something I'll keep doing from here on out. Let me know if you guys like it. Definitely make sure to leave a comment. If you do or don't, I appreciate all feedback. But without further ado, let's quickly discuss the background of this trade. So back in 2014-15 time, the Atlanta Braves were they were struggling. They weren't a good team. Now, at that point, the only thing keeping them from being one of the worst teams in baseball was the fact that the Phillies and the Marlins played in their division. Now remember, 2014, the Phillies were the worst team in baseball, and the Marlins haven't been relevant for about 7 years at this point, 8 years at this point. Remember, this is 2015. The Mets were a really good team at this point, and the Nationals were the Nationals. I mean, they weren't that strong either. The NL East was garbage. But the Braves decided, they wanted to make some moves, so they started making trades, and this was one of the bigger ones. Now, on the flip side, you have your buyer, the San Diego Padres. Normally, you would expect the Padres to be a seller, but 2015 was a weird year. The 2014-15 offseason was weird. The Padres made a lot of moves, and they started just acquiring salary. They threw some big contracts at players in free agency, and they made a couple trades. Now, they wanted to win now, and they thought they could do it. But unfortunately for them, it didn't necessarily work as well as they'd hoped. So without further ado, we'll jump into the video. And of course, you can see that San Diego acquired relief pitcher Craig Kimbrel alongside outfielder B.J. Upton, also known as Melvin Upton, from Atlanta in exchange for a trio of outfielders in Carlos Quentin, Cameron Maybin, and Jordan Parobeck, alongside pitcher Matt Weissler and the 41st pick in the 2015 MLB draft, of which the Braves would use to select third baseman outfielder Austin Riley. Draft picks are not usually traded in baseball, so it's always fun when that happens, and this is one of those rare times. But how did this trade work out for these two teams? Who won? Did anyone really win? Did anyone really lose? And how did all the other trades go? Well, we'll start off with, as always, the team that received the player in question, Craig Kimbrel, so the San Diego Padres. The Padres with Kimbrel. Kimbrel had a respectable 2015 season for the team, but the team did not do as well as they'd hoped and ended up going into a rebuild, firing their GM and everything. So they ended up trading Kimbrel to the Boston Red Sox after one season in exchange for 4 different players. And those players were outfielder Manuel Margot, relief pitcher / infielder Javi Guerrera, second baseman Carlos Asuaje, and pitcher Logan Allen. How did those 4 players pan out for the Padres? Well, Margot was a serviceable center fielder for a little over 3 seasons. And by serviceable, I mean serviceable. He was a little better than average. He wasn't elite, but he was a good starter for them. Not a non-big market team. He ends up getting traded before the 2020 season. That trade will not be discussed. I don't want to touch 2020 right now just because a shortened season, and it's not worth it to me. But I have to mention it. I'm going to skip Javi for a second. Carlos Asuaje, he was designated for the assignment after 2 seasons on and off the team, so nothing amazing out of him. And Logan Allen, so he appears in 8 games before being traded during the 2019 season. Now, the Logan Allen trade is going to be discussed, or has been discussed, I should say, in the Yasiel Puig video, which is up. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend checking that out. He was traded to the Cleveland MLB team in that trade. So, just had to mention that. And lastly, we have Javi Guerrera. So you might be wondering about Javi. Yes, he is a reliever who also plays the infield. There are a few guys who do that. There's him, there's Michael Lorenzen of the Cincinnati Reds. Of course, Shohei Ohtani, he DHs and he pitches. And Brendan McKay of the Braves, he's a first baseman and a starting pitcher. And, it goes to show you how baseball works. And for, Guerrero, he debuted for the most part as an infielder in 2018, but since then he's been converted to a relief pitcher is what it is. He could probably play infield if they needed him to, but he's still on the team. Time will tell about him. And how did the second part of the trade go for them with the second player, BJ Upton, also known as Melvin Upton, as I said? Well, BJ Upton, he had a 1.5 consistent seasons in San Diego, but he ends up getting traded mid-season to the Toronto Blue Jays in exchange for a pitcher named Hansel Rodriguez. And Rodriguez is a minor league player at this stage, so the jury's still out on this trade on San Diego's part. But that's how San Diego did. How did Atlanta do with their 5 players? Well, Carlos Quentin, he immediately gets designated for the assignment. They didn't want him. They didn't see the point in keeping him. They just let him go. As for Cameron Maybin, he has a decent season before he himself gets traded to the Detroit Tigers. Now, this trade will be discussed in an upcoming video about the Yoenis Cespedes trade. So watch out for the Yoenis Cespedes trade. That will be its own separate video coming up soon. Don't worry, I have it in the queue. It probably will be the next video in all honesty. But that's what happened with Cameron Maybin. Jordan Parabek, he himself, he never made the majors, unfortunately, for himself and the Braves. Matt Weissler, so he showed flashes of brilliance, but also had his struggles. So he would bounce between AAA and Major League Baseball for 3.5 seasons for the Braves organization before he himself is traded. And he's traded alongside pitcher Lucas Sims and outfielder Preston Tucker to the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for an outfielder named Adam Duvall. Now, Adam Duvall himself, he's been a bench bat for the Braves for a solid season and a half, and he's made a couple good plays in 2020 at this point, but again, I'm not including 2020 in these videos. The war's not worth it at this point in time. After the season's over, different story. So, how did the last player do, Austin Riley? Well, Austin Riley, he debuted in 2019. He started off on fire, but he cooled off since then. He's been a good player. He showed flashes with his power, but other than that, he has really had his struggles. So that is the trade for the main 2 teams. How did the other teams involved do? Well, Boston with Craig Kimbrel. Kimbrel himself, he had 3 strong seasons as Boston's closer, which, of course, we all know included the World Series run in 2018. And he would walk after the 2018 season. Midway through 2019, he finally signed a contract. But he was an impressive player for Boston. He was key at times. He also had a couple struggles, but for the most part, good player. They definitely do not regret that trade. Toronto, BJ Upton, he just struggled to live up to his contract in the half season he spent in Toronto, and he ends up getting released. So, nothing great with him. And, of course, lastly, we have the Cincinnati Reds. Matt Weissler, he spent a half season on the team before he himself was designated for the assignment. Lucas Sims, he debuted a little while ago. He's bounced between AAA and Major League Baseball for a season and a half. Doesn't really have a steady role on the Major League roster. And Preston Tucker, he was traded back to Atlanta after a half season. He was traded for cash, so that's why I don't have a separate trade here, but it goes to show you. So all in all, the Craig Kimbrel trade was definitely an interesting trade. And who won? If you go by WAR, San Diego got a WAR of 10.5, specifically because BJ Upton was good for them. Kimbrel was respectable, but mostly Manuel Margot, 3 years as a solid center fielder. The Braves didn't do that hot, only getting a single 1.0 WAR. Now, again, that's subject to change. Adam Duvall is still on the team, as is Austin Riley. Austin Riley has shown a lot of potential. So this is definitely subject to change still, despite the fact that this trade happened 5 years ago. It goes to show you. Boston had a good showing with a 6.7 WAR. The Reds got a 0.2 WAR out of their 3 players, and the Blue Jays are the only quote-unquote loser by getting a negative 0.4 WAR. But yeah, that is the Craig Kimbrel trade. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely feel free to like and subscribe. And again, if you're curious about what happened with Logan Allen, his trade to Cleveland was already discussed in the Yasiel Puig video, and the Cameron Maybin trade to Detroit from Atlanta will be discussed in the upcoming Yoenis Cespedes video. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great rest of your day.